Hey guys, this is John, and welcome to another Climbing the Rating Ladder video. I'm playing a nice step, rated 2290 in this 10-minute game. No increment whatsoever involved here. Okay, I open with knight f3, flexible move. I'm going to play g3 on move 2. Knight f3 is typically the move I play these days against the higher rated cohort. So pulling out the A repertoire here, boys and girls, for this game against a very good player. I've been feeling pretty good today. I'm actually recording this quite late. It is 10:30 p.m. I played a little bit of chess earlier today in a Lichess arena, and it went well. So I figured, why not try to keep this going, huh? Okay, let's castle. And after bishop g7, I'm going to go d4. I do think this is the best move. Obviously, we have a symmetric position now, but I will try to follow up with c4, injecting some Catalan Queen's Gambit-ish type play into the position. Okay, and black plays c6. Now here, there's a bunch of different moves you can play. You could take, you could play b3 to support the pawn, knight bd2. I often play this kind of quirky looking move, knight a3. I'm just thinking if I want to do that here. I feel like I played it in maybe not a climbing the rating ladder game, but maybe a standard game somewhat recently. Yeah, I think it was a standard game. Pretty fascinating one. So maybe I'll switch it up. Yeah, let's actually take, and I might play knight e5 after that. And there's some similarities to the exchange Slav with this maneuver, but I hope that the knight proves to be annoying for black and that they may have a hard time eliminating it, or they'll start thinking about doing so. So yeah, let's play knight c3 here. Idea, if they take, I take back, and then I hit the d5 pawn. Just because of the way that black kind of paused right here on move number 7, or I think even a little earlier, yeah, g6, suggests to me like maybe that they're not so comfortable with this situation. So I can take it into a structure I'm familiar with, and they very quickly play e6, locking in the bishop. Now I'm thinking about taking and then playing knight a4, trying to blockade this c5 square. Also thinking if there's some benefit to bishop f4 first. I don't want to take a huge amount of time here. Yeah, I could play the bishop f4 move if I want to be flexible. Kind of tempted to do that, but then knight h5. Yeah, okay, let's take. And after they take back, knight a4 or bishop f4. Still haven't decided. Bishop f4. Again, maybe knight h5. Let's play this knight a4 move. I'm going to make a clear play for this square. The downside to this approach is that black may get it in their head to go for e5, and I think they're already maneuvering to do so. So what's my play in trying to stop that or discourage it? I could think about f4 here, or I could just let e5 occur and try to attack c6. So something like bishop f4 now, e5, take, knight takes, and then maybe b3, let's say. Actually looks fairly reasonable. Yeah, I'm using a little time, so let's just go bishop f4. I'll try to keep this nice and simple. Useful move. That's my last minor piece in the game. Looking to continue with rook c1 and attack this pawn if I can. So black has this backward pawn. The square immediately in front of a backward pawn is almost always weak. So if you take one thing away from this video, especially so far, maybe that's something that can stick in your head. A backwards pawn often comes with a square right in front of that pawn that's weak. All right, let's take. We'll see if they take with the bishop or the knight. They do take with the bishop. All right, I could initiate the trade. I could also think about queen d2 or bishop h6 even. Bishop h6 looks kind of interesting to me, because I do think that's a little annoying for black. I'm not so worried about b2. I have that defended. This feels like one of those moments where the engine can probably eke out an edge here. I think I might go with bishop h6. Let's do it. Let's let black consider whether they want to play rook e8 or bishop g7. And my thinking is, if I initiate the trade on g7 versus e5, this knight's a little worse off. And they do go there. So yeah, let's take. And if I give a check, I think queen f6 is going to be the answer. So rook c1 looks much more natural to me. Queen f6 might still be played, but maybe then queen c2 could start getting some pressure going. Ooh, I'm also thinking, okay, if I do play queen d4, queen f6, we trade. Do I have the pressure anyways on this square? Maybe there's some sort of bishop a6 somewhere for my opponent. But let me give that a little bit more thought, because I do think that's kind of attractive. I think queen d4, they're going to be pretty likely to play queen f6. And since I do foresee my pressure continuing here, maybe I go for that. Yeah, actually, I think I will. I'll play it. Now, I'm behind on the clock, and this is a no-increment game. So, of course, I need to speed up. But I do like how this is going so far. This is also my brand of chess. Just try to get a strategic edge, maintain control, accumulate advantages. You can see I'm playing much more to my true style when I'm facing a good player like this. So yeah, queen d4. I do think queen f6 will be played. I think if you have to move king g8 or f6, especially f6, Ben Feingold's right about that one in this instance. Not a good move. So I'm anticipating queen f6, queen takes f6, knight takes f6, and then I want to bring a rook to c1. I'm just debating which rook to bring there. It actually might make sense to play rook f to c1 so that on bishop a6, there's not this issue with my rook kind of dangling there. So, yep, they do play that. Okay, let's take. They might take with the king, so I'm going to capture quickly so I can think on their time. But I expect knight takes. Really close call which rook to put on c1. It's a classic dilemma in chess. In my experience, guys, you shouldn't... Okay, they do take with the king. In my experience, you shouldn't belabor the point with that decision too much. You kind of just have to choose one and go with it. Yeah, okay, now I think I'm more likely to play rook ac1. Just thinking if there's any reason to prefer the other rook. I don't really see it. Because in this case, yeah, I'm going to play rook ac1 because if bishop a6 now, I win the game. So they have to play this fairly ugly move. Okay, now I feel like I'm getting somewhere. Maybe bishop h3. I can try to get into the c5 square. It's going to be hard to increase the pressure on c6 for now, but I have ideas like rook c3, maybe bring a rook over to b3 at some stage. This bishop h3 move looks pretty attractive. So yeah, let's play that to start. I could perhaps see this going down to some sort of good knight versus bad bishop scenario if I can install this knight on c5. Again, notice I'm still focused on that square right in front of the backwards pawn. This is the type of edge, as you get better and better in chess, you can win with. Okay, so this is some higher level stuff going on here. At these rating levels, you typically don't see too many major unforced errors. They still happen, but they're not as prevalent. Okay, so I have this option if I want. Take and then knight c5. Black's going to play king c7 at that point. The question is, do I have enough to squeeze there? It's a very pleasant situation, but do I have enough to squeeze? Am I better off maybe playing something like rook c3, biding my time? Black might go knight b6. I think I'm going to go for the pure knight versus bishop. I'm going to do it. Could also even wait here, but let's check. Let's force them to play king c7. I feel like they want to go king d6, so I'm going to force them to go king c7. Probably now lift the rook. e4 somewhat comes to mind too, but I feel like lifting the rook is correct. Maybe with this or just various ideas in mind. Yeah, let's play it. So I want to keep this knight on c5 for the foreseeable future. I also simply have a plan of playing rook f to c1 and then threatening knight takes b7. Okay, so they go rook a to c8. So this leaves this pawn a little vulnerable. I could swing over here if I want, because if I play this move, I think black has to go back to a8. King b6 runs into knight d7. So debating that. That looks nice. That might buy me time. Yeah, I think I'm going to play that. That might buy me time to get this other rook over to c1 when black is forced to play an objectively quite passive move, rook a8. Also note king b8 runs into knight d7 too. This is the Hydra effect, the many heads of the knight here, the many ways I can torment black in this position. Okay, so they do go back. Yeah, let's play rook c1. Again, need to speed up, mindful of the time here. Kind of think black maybe should play something like bishop c8. Just to get that bishop out of range of the knight. It does disconnect the rooks. It's not a happy move, but I could see it being played. Next, I may try to play f3, king f2. Okay, they play rook e8, hitting that pawn. Yeah, that's also possible, isn't it? Okay. So do I want to play e3? E3 seems almost automatic here. I think I'll play it. Part of me wants to not play that move, but I don't have a lot of time to quibble here. It does block me from playing rook f3, but okay, I can still play f3, king f2 if I want. Still trying to be cognizant of obvious tactical opportunities. I mean, maybe something like this comes to mind too, where I could go after a7 at some point. Okay, what's their play with this move? That one I don't understand. Just reinforcing, I suppose. Okay. So rook a5, I think, does make some sense here. But they might play the bishop back to c8. Ah, what about the trade? Now the trade, take, rook check, king c7. They just defend everything. Now, I'm only going to make that trade if it's really good to do so. Let's play rook a5. I feel like this is a fairly risk-free move. I want to stop them from going pawn a5. Maybe I pivot this knight back here in some cases. A downside of this move is I do lose some control of e3. So I got to be aware of that. But I'm leaning more towards the queen side now in terms of how I plan to pressure black. Still trying to make sure my king is safe, though. I don't want some light square disaster to happen, some d4 type move at an inopportune moment. Yeah, I think d4 now would be premature. But there is some universe where, let's say, a bishop comes down to h3 and black's got a couple rooks screaming down the file. There's a universe where I may not want to allow it. All right, h5. Let's just play h4 here. Stop them from expanding. Easy to play move. Gives my king a little more room too. Okay, king d6. Yup. Okay, let's bring this up. Hinting at this move. Again, I do think this bishop's going to come back to c8. I think that's pretty likely. I mean, maybe I go here, kind of swing around this way. I can try it. For now, I'm just going to try to play some quick moves, kind of sit on this position. Maybe king g2. Yeah, I think king g2 is useful. Do I care about them playing rook b8, though? Maybe I want to stop rook b8. Could go here. Yeah, let's play this move. This knight's supported. Let's stop them from going rook b8 for now. I don't know. I deployed my rooks in a little unusual fashion here, but I've succeeded in stopping a5 at least. Okay, so they bring their bishop out. Do they want d4 sometime soon? I don't know. So let's play check first of all. Maybe I repeat once, just to check their intentions. No pun intended. Yeah, I'm going to come back. And maybe now I go here. I'm just noticing this move could be good. I'm like inching up the board. Now d4 is not a thing I have to worry about. Yeah, this feels right. Also gets the rook off a square where the bishop can maybe attack it. I have given this bishop some scope. I don't have any pawns on light squares, which is kind of why earlier I was thinking about the f3 move. But I think it's fine still. If I could get my king over here, that feels a little more secure. Okay, now this move probably makes sense. Let's do it. They go back. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to start trying to get the king over. Let's just get that king out of dodge. Because again, d4 is not a threat. So I would feel better if my king was somewhere, maybe even all the way up on d4. Why not? Who says I can't do that? Looks okay. I mean, they might play rook e8 at some point, but I think even then, I'm really just trying to watch out for tricks. But I think even then, I'm fine. All right, so they dig in. Rook b7, maybe? Rook b7 could be a move here. Or rook a6. Let's go rook b7. Got to start playing faster, John. You're going to be playing a bullet game here. So simplifying a little bit. But I want this knight back on c5 to attack this bishop. And I'm going to try to threaten here. If a5, I can play b4. I'm making some progress. Now, if we get to a situation where I can trade the rooks, I might be able to just win this endgame. Walk in with the king. Yeah, so let's come here. And now rook b8 would actually lose the game on the spot because of knight a6. So I think I'm getting in. I feel like Ulf Anderson or Karpov here. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Pride comes before the fall, especially in this game. Yeah. Some maneuvering here has succeeded for me. That's how a lot of strategic games feel sometimes. When you have like a stable edge, you're kind of going around and around. You're trying to accumulate advantages. The opponent's putting up roadblocks. This feels like it's going to collapse now for black because there's no semblance of coordination here. Yeah, give a check. And now if I take here, okay, I'm not threatening mate per se, but it's close. Check. Yeah, no mate. You know what I might do? I might just go back because I think this endgame should be a win. Just solidify everything first. Get this pawn on a dark square. Probably go e4 soon. Could also maneuver a little bit. Yeah, let's play e4, though. I don't want to mess around. Okay, still some technique required. I am up a pawn. Black has these split pawns, but still technique required here. Okay, let's play this. I want to get into this square if I can. Also, some options of coming elsewhere. All right, black's getting forced further back, and now I hit a number of points. I'll take this. I think I can just start making a pass pawn here. Defend everything. Check. Really nice with the knight, too, in a situation like this. You can just kind of maneuver to your heart's content. Let's get a check in. King a6, I think, can come up there. Okay, so now they're kind of stuck here. My knight controls all these squares. I'm going to go back over towards the king side at this point. They can't attack anything. Let's play a couple more useful moves. And then I'm going to go after the g-pawn. We're going to release their... they actually traded. I'm a little surprised by that. Let's take this. Restrict them. Get them down to 2 squares, and then come in for the kill. All right. Made it. Well, that worked out well towards the end. I mean, cut it close on the clock, but that's going to happen when there's no increment. Again, I wouldn't recommend playing without increment, guys. It's 10:30 at night, so I kind of wanted to play a quicker game and still have it be instructive. And also, I need to work on my time management, so this always forces me to do that. Yeah, so I felt very much in control that entire game. I think some of the decisions in the opening had a lot of bearing on the type of queenless middle game that we got. And I really started feeling like I had a stranglehold on the position when we got into that knight versus bishop. So after I traded queens and I played bishop h3 and took on d7, followed by knight c5, it's possible black can resist there, but I think more often than not in practice, that's just going to be a miserable defense for black, almost always, against a good player, because that knight is untouchable on the c5 square. Black has to be extremely patient. And to my opponent's credit, I think they were patient for quite a while, but they never created any counterplay for themselves. You know, so even if we think about what's going on the king side around here, I was most uncertain with this conversion with playing stuff like rook a5, rook c3. Maybe black had a chance. Not saying this is necessarily correct, but maybe something like f6 and g5. That's the type of idea that could cause me to lose faith in what I'm doing on the queen side, or distract me just enough where I have to start thinking about my king that I may have to scramble, and time's ticking low. The game could get a little more confused. So I think if you're playing black in a situation like that, you got to try to look for resources along those lines. Yeah, because as played, I got the king all the way around to d4, rook b7. I feel like black is busted here. This would be so hard to defend. Maybe earlier, kind of thinking after I played rook c1, maybe here black should have played a5. But even then, I'm not so sure, because this pawn could be a target. Knight b3, there is king b6, though. I could have played rook a5 a move earlier. That might have been the cleanest if I really want to prevent a5. So we'll look at a couple things in the conversion, but I think at a high level, a lot of this is determined prior to all this happening. You know, the first 15 moves, this is all theoretical stuff. I actually don't know the theory that well. I just know that knight e5 is a move that can pressure black here. But yeah, I kind of feel like black lost the thread somewhere around here. I'm very happy with this. I thought knight takes f6, by the way, was a better option, and play bishop d7 to defend the pawn. But this might already be just kind of miserable for black. Oh, there's also this. So maybe this was a more active situation too, or an attempt at it. This here, I can't even take on c6 because of the bishop double attacking. And they're also hitting this pawn. So yeah, we'll check a few things in this Neo-Grünfeld Defense Classical Original. You got the rare Classical Original, guys. Ultra delayed exchange. I feel like chess.com is just adding adjectives for effect. I know chess.com likes to hype stuff, but this feels like it's overdoing it a little bit, right? Classical Original Ultra Delayed Exchange Variant. Are we talking about like the newest brand of potato chip or a chess opening? All right. Let's click into the game review. You guys can tell I'm in an especially good mood today. I've been getting a lot of exercise recently, walking outside a lot. I think that's helped my chess and my mood. Okay, this is the type of graph we like to see. Just a gentle uptrend and then reaching decisive territory. No sudden spike downward. No significant downtrend at some point where you blunder. So, yeah, I mean, tough. This just indicates a tough situation for black, but we're going to look for ways they could have improved. So knight f3, this is a flexible move. I play d4 quite a bit too, but as I've gotten older and gained more experience in chess, I recognize the value of controlling the opening action versus strictly going for the absolute theoretical advantage, per se. And knight f3 helps me do that. I'm not going to claim knight f3 is better than e4 or d4. I think those moves are pretty much all on par. I'm not even going to claim oftentimes I get advantages out of knight f3. But kind of like I've been telling you guys about the Scandinavian, which you'll hear more about in the coming months because I've been working on a Scandinavian course, there's a ton of value, or in the Stafford Gambit video that I posted recently, there's a ton of value in just trying to fight on your own territory in chess. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering territory. It can just be positions or middle games or pawn structures where you feel far more at ease and you have far more experience than your average opponent. That matters a lot. That matters way more than what Anish Giri, Hikaru Nakamura, Magnus Carlsen, Alexei Serrana, all the best players in the world, I'm just naming some, that matters more than what they're playing. Is, do you feel comfortable playing the resulting positions? Can you actually say that you have an edge experience-wise and understanding-wise in the positions you're getting? And for me, at this stage in my career, knight f3 is probably the move that facilitates that best. So d5, this is one of the best moves in reply. I usually play d4 here, which transposes into queen's pawn territory, but I go g3. And this could lead to reverse King's Indian attacks type stuff. There's some Catalan crossover too if white ever goes c4, d4, c4. Some ready crossover as well, although I think ready doesn't usually have g3 involved. It's just a little amorphous. Yeah, and black paused here. They spent 20 seconds on this move, g6. That is a good move. Sometimes they play it without knight f6 first. But that kind of indicated they might not be too familiar with this. And that's what encouraged me to go for this exchange variation coming up. So I'm going to skip an opening overview because there's just so many possibilities that are possible here. We're very early in the theory. But after c4, black does have a fundamental decision. They don't want to allow c takes d5 usually, so they either play c6 to reinforce, to be able to recapture with the pawn, much like a Slav, or they can take this pawn on c4, which is more dynamic and leads to, I would say, more Grünfeld-like play. So we can take a look in the opening book here just to show that. Yeah, d takes c4, c6. Knight c6 also played a little bit. That's interesting. I don't recall having any games with this. I mean, visually, I think I'd be pretty happy here with white. Kind of reminds me of a Marshall defense, but maybe there's something to this for black. In my experience, most people do play c6 versus taking the pawn, but that must be just my experience. Let me shrink my camera. Big John is going smaller here. Yeah, because d takes c4 and c6 are pretty close in terms of their popularity. So, and white usually plays this to try to win the pawn back, and white hopes that their two center pawns against black's one confers an advantage down the line. Okay, so that's playable. So after c6, and now here, I mentioned there's some possibilities at this point. We can see the breakdown. Just a lot of moves that have been played. C takes d5. I think I mentioned b3, knight bd2. Queen b3, actually the next most popular move. Interesting. Yeah, so applying a little pressure here, observing this. Could get into some queen standoff style situation. I've never played this line. I have had success with this fairly down the list move, knight a3. There's this grandmaster. I think he's a Bosnian grandmaster. Apologies to him if I got his country wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's Bosnian. Predrag Nikolic, Nikolic. He has played this line for many years. Knight a3, defending the pawn on c4. It's kind of quirky, but I've had some success with this move too. But this time I decided to play c takes d5. I play the exchange Slav too, and I've just had so much success with the exchange Slav and exchange structures online. I was happy to play it here. So, especially given black's hesitance early in the opening. Yeah, and here, knight c3, knight e5. Knight c3 most popular. The only thing with knight c3 is black might try to do knight e4, kind of what I did to them, where if you eliminate the knight, you have to be willing to allow this attack here. And I guess there's some theory from this position, a lot of it drawn, which in fact I think we'll see overall there's a pretty high drawing margin here. So my opponent, after knight e5 though, played knight c6. Knight g4. Yeah, knight g4 is the second most played move here. I do recall this. And I think there's been some GM draws, some Grandmaster draws, where they actually go back and forth like this. Some early repetition. But yeah, knight g4 would be a direct way to play to try to get rid of this knight. Could try to prop the knight up, but it feels like if they can take, that's not so great. Okay, so black played knight c6, and now I play knight c3. I do wonder if black can actually capture here. Even though it loses the d5 pawn, they can claim that they have this counterattack on f4. So it looks like there's some games with this too. Okay, this looks kind of nice for white, though. I wouldn't mind this. Interesting line here. Just kind of playing down this variation where white goes up a pawn. Looks like black wins it back, though. White probably trying to squeeze some small edge out of this with the pressure here and taking over the file. I mean, I like lines like this where, yeah, there's a lot of draws, but if anyone wins, it's pretty much only white. So that's kind of what you're looking at in a line like this. It's fairly symmetric, almost completely symmetric. So a good outcome for white is some nagging pressure where black has to play many, many moves to equalize, if they do equalize at all. Yeah, so black played e6, also still the most popular move. Yeah, and we're following some well-trodden territory here, apparently. f4 also possible. Wasn't sure I wanted to commit to f4 yet, although it does help prop up the knight. It does weaken the e4 square. I'm going to click into the analysis for a second. Okay, so take, knight a4. And again, this reminds me a lot of an exchange Slav. This is a typical thing that happens. And I'm trying to exploit that c5 square and the backwards pawn behind it. That's pretty much everything here. Maybe the restriction of this bishop, but this is primarily what white can point to as a potential advantage. Okay, so knight d7. I bet we're still following a lot of games. Yeah, bishop f4. Okay. And here black played, I think, e5 right away. Yep, that seems to be fine. Looks like bishop a6 gets played a lot too. I probably would have played rook c1. Interesting. Black can perhaps use tactics to try to prove that this pawn is not capturable because it runs into bishop b5. I mentioned a similar idea in the game. So, okay. You know, just judging by the stats, this is a line I'd be happy to play again as white. And the engine only gives a hair advantage to white, but it kind of strikes me as a position where black has to be real careful. And just like a lot of exchange Slav positions, yeah, it's equal in theory. So is the starting position by most accounts, the starting position in chess. But the risk reward, I think, favors white. And black is the one who has to be pretty accurate in, again, a fairly symmetric situation. Engine likes queen f6, but this, I'm not running the engine at a high depth. So hard to say if we can trust that. Queen f6 has been played 11 times. Looks like white does pretty well against that move. Does hit this pawn. Interesting. Is the idea you provoke e3 and then you play e5? I was thinking maybe g5 at some point too could be a thing. There were some possible scenarios like this in the game where somehow keeping the queens on board felt like it was going to help black. Because I can't as easily just focus on attacking c6. I always have to reckon with counterplay towards my own king. You could imagine the dark squares, if ever black got a chance to like drop a knight in here, supported by the queen, or bishop g4 or something. There's more moving parts to this. Whereas in the game, with the queens coming off, I didn't have to worry about that so much. So, hey, if you play this variation for either color, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know. Tony Rowe, for instance, if you happen to watch this, I have a feeling this is a line you might know something about. But anyone, feel free to comment. I want to learn more about this structure and this opening. It's kind of playing it by feel. So e5 takes. Yeah, now bishop takes. I also wonder if black should even be trading the dark square bishops or offering to trade. These moves are neck and neck. Bishop takes e5 and knight takes e5. But I do wonder if it's better to keep the bishops on board, just trying to keep more resources involved. So bishop takes. All right, and the engine likes bishop h6. Yeah, I thought this move would be a little annoying because, yeah, black could avoid a bishop trade, but then their king feels kind of locked in. I can attack this pawn. This just seemed pleasant for me. So they go bishop g7. I take, then give the check. Okay, so the engine at first blush here does not like queen d4, even though I pointed to that move as one that kind of felt like gave me control coming up. But maybe that's due to black taking with the king rather than the knight, as I see the engine is already recommending. Interesting. So let's say rook c1 is played. I thought black would go queen f6 anyways here. Oh my, rook takes c6. Okay. That would have been interesting to see if I would have found that move. Looks so obvious in hindsight. I bet you guys see the idea. It's this. Wow. Funny, because that chain a moment ago, just 2 moves ago, looked pretty sturdy for black, aside from some slight pressure on c6, and then all of a sudden it gets torn down in an instant. Wow. And white's up 2 pawns, only plus 0.7, although I have noticed the engine sometimes undershoots these advantages when you're analyzing on chess.com. But I could see why black has some compensation here. You know, like b2's kind of weak, bishop h3 is a thing. White has some cleanup to do here. They might even lose a pawn back somehow. Wow, that's a cool idea. Rook takes c6, bishop takes d5. I'll have to remember that. Yeah, because it's so easily to just mentally categorize this mini pawn structure as impenetrable. But you have to be vigilant for tactics at all times in chess. And that's a great reminder right there. So on rook c1, it's therefore suggesting something kind of passive. Bishop b7, which looks a little bit like the game. I could even try something like this later. Note that bishop a6, I think, just doesn't make sense here because this is a fork, but I can back off somewhere and my queen is defending the knight. If the queen's not defending, then this is a valid idea for black. Okay, so long story short, I did not play rook c1. I played queen d4, queen f6, trade. So king takes did surprise me, but let's see why knight takes is better. I was debating which rook to put here. Let's say I go with rook fc1. All right, bishop d7. What about bishop a6? Yeah, bishop a6. I mean, if black can kind of keep it to 0.2, quarter pawn, 0.3 maybe, that feels defensible compared to the game where I have a feeling it's going to be a half pawn or greater advantage for white. I am a little surprised bishop d7 is the top move here because this seems nice for me. I don't know. I mean, maybe black can trade knights at some point, but the presence of the bishops on board, and the knights too, so the same set of minor pieces, definitely gives black a lot more chances compared to the game because they could trade this knight at some point or create problems for me elsewhere. Whereas in the game, the knight was just a perma knight on c5. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I still think bishop a6 looks a little more active and maybe preferable here. Like jam the bishop here, although I can still come into this square, maybe flirt with a4. The engine's not panicking at all for black, though. Apparently, they've got enough room to maneuver here. Yeah, if I chase the bishop, they can work their way out. And they got that c6 weakness, but the more pieces on board, the better for black. So that's another thing you can take away from this. If you have a worse pawn structure, something that actually exacerbates the effect of the bad pawn structure, it increases the badness of it, for lack of a better way to describe it, is when you trade pieces and when you simplify. So that's a well-known principle. Generally, with a statically worse structure, a structure that you cannot easily improve or trade down, as in trading the pawns itself, you don't want to trade too many pieces because oftentimes those pawns just get weaker and weaker heading into the endgame. Try to create counterplay elsewhere if you can. Okay, so that's a little hypothetical there. Knight takes f6. I guess that just opens more avenues for counterplay for black. Bishop d7 or even the bishop a6 move. Because again, in the game, bishop a6 didn't work because that move, rook takes c6, was coming with check. So let's compare that now. King takes. I played this rook over. Yeah, because now I felt like I didn't have to fear this. So I didn't need to get out of this diagonal necessarily. So they went bishop e7. Yeah, and this is about a half pawn advantage, according to the engine. Maybe I jumped the gun on this whole operation. Bishop h3 is not even in the top 3 moves here, suggesting rook fd1, e3, e4. Rook fd1 looks totally normal. Definitely could understand that. Maybe I have e4 in mind. Yeah. Yeah, this move looks pretty good too. Rook fd8. e4 anyways, huh? Okay, just more of a outright attack on this pawn, I suppose. Maybe I've studied too many games of Capablanca, Karpov, Anderson, all these strategic players I was mentioning, but it seemed so natural to play bishop h3 here. I'd be curious what you guys think too. And I'm playing it at a moment, note, where black can't play f5. They can't block my bishop's scope. Maybe they're best off playing knight b6. I think I did either mention this in the game or I definitely thought about it because I don't want to trade knights. And I certainly don't want to trade knights if they can take this way and connect their pawns together. So I would play knight c5 here, hit the bishop, and then they can go bishop c8. This also looks like a better version of the game for black when they keep knights on board. Let's just say I trade. So if we have knight versus knight, well, black can slowly maneuver to play knight d7. Actually, not even going to take them very long. And you can see the engine adjusts the eval for that. It's going down a little bit. Just to show this. Let's just make some standard looking moves. If we get down to this, well, despite some trades having occurred and I having warned against that, I think it'd be worth it for black to get rid of that knight because on a relative basis, my knight on c5 was so much stronger than either of black's minor pieces. And with the king close to, that counts for something. I don't think white should be able to win this position. This should probably be drawn. So, yeah, king e7, take. I mean, the engine's still not that impressed, but I was pretty happy here, especially with the time situation. I feel like I could analyze the coming portion of the game for quite a while because there are many plans I can undertake here. Yeah, it's not even clear looking at the engine what's best. I'd say the main thing is just try to keep control if you're white in a situation like this. Create annoying threats. Do not feel rushed. The only thing you should feel rushed by is the clock. Like in terms of the position, white has absolute control here because of the knight being so much better than the bishop and blockading these pawns. Black having this pawn on c6 that is always weak in virtually every scenario. I don't want to trade early. I certainly don't want to take their bishop unless I'm winning a pawn or better. I want to create some threats and improve my pieces, get my rooks in the game, creep forward with the pawns, get my king involved, but I'm not pulling the trigger on anything too soon. So let's just kind of go through here. And those are themes that I picked up from, these players I mentioned. Vladimir Kramnik as well. Learned a lot from his patient grinds of people over the years. Yeah, and the engine is suggesting rook a5 at this point. I think black's last move, king c7, was pretty much forced. But this move, rook a to c8, I think that's probably a bit of an error because after rook a3, they do have to come back. I mean, interesting, the engine's not even saying rook a3. It just wants me to double here. Maybe it's also an error because black takes away the c8 square from the bishop. So I could see that being the case. There were various times where I thought black was going to play bishop c8 earlier than they did, just to get it out of range of the knight. Okay, I dragged them back there. Yeah, and I think in hindsight, I should have played this move. Because a5 might be a decent move here for black. Yeah, because that pawn looks like it's on a bad square. Knight b3. Oh, wow, they can even do this, though. Wow, bishop a6, and then try to jam the bishop here or attack this pawn. Yeah, so I think slight error by me actually allowing black the opportunity to play a5. They went rook e8. I played e3. Wasn't quite sure how I wanted these pawns. I mean, another option is to play f3, king f2. Later on, I didn't have any pawns on light squares, so it might have been nice to have one pawn at least on a light square to try to restrict their bishop. and e3 did take away my lateral play. I think I thought briefly about this move, but I don't know. Maybe I just rejected it internally because of f5. But it could be argued that this is a further weakness. You know, the e6 square is a little bit weaker, but we're kind of splitting hairs here. So e3, rook e7. Now I do play this. I finally noticed that black might go a5 if I don't. Yeah, and I was mentioning in the postmortem, I thought somewhere around here, maybe black should start trying to get creative on the king side to create some counterplay. Still, though, the edge is only about a half pawn. Wow, and look at this. All right, dip down to 0. I don't want to get hypnotized by the engine here, but I'm looking for any way black can create counterplay out of this. I just repeat, always repeat, as Ben Feingold says. Even though I'm down on the clock, it's possible black would deviate and make a mistake. I don't think I burned that much time, too. I was pretty proud of this move. I thought rook b4 was a nice move. Just improved my rook position a little bit. I don't want to have to worry about d4. Because, again, if I get careless, how could I show this? I mean, I don't even know if this would work, but let's just say something like this. I don't want some scenario. You could imagine the pawn are back on the h2 or something, and especially the bishops here. I don't want some scenario where they penetrated to the back rank, and I'm weak on the light squares in particular. So having rook b4 as an insurance policy, covering that square with the rook, was pretty nice. And I think here, black more or less resolved to just wait. And I'm not going to say this is a position I would save as black, because I still think this is miserable. But yeah, rook a8, rook a to e8 looks a lot more productive, because they have this controlled. Even if I play rook a4, I'm not exactly threatening to take. Well, I guess maybe I could consider this and taking here. But that does put me in a pin. That looks awkward. This might be the type of moment where black could turn the tables in some scenario where I get my pieces all tangled up trying to hunt a pawn. Maybe it backfires. Yeah, I mean, if I have to find knight d8, it's like, what's going on here? Both rooks are hanging. All rooks are hanging. And I have a knight takes c6 threat. If I have to find something like that to keep an advantage and my clock is very low, that's a great outcome for black, having been tortured for this game. So it's really tough for black, but I do think they got to try something to mix it up here. It's still not too late for f6 g5 as well. Maybe I can more or less ignore f6 g5 because my rook is helping to defend here. Maybe I just walk the king over like I did in the game. And if takes this way, but it's something. Yeah, because as played, you just felt like black was shuffling here. Like they weren't going to do anything super challenging. And I got to get my king out of this slightly uncomfortable situation on the king side, being away from my other pieces. And in fact, I got to walk the king all the way up to d4. Yeah, it's now suggesting maybe king e5 to try to prevent that. I mean, I do have knight d3 whenever I want. This feels rough. I feel like black is close to losing here. Still not too late for maybe this move. Or I guess the engine's saying bishop c8 to cover b7. My position is real pretty. I almost feel like I'm playing checkers here with all these dark square pieces and pawns. But how do I ultimately break through? I probably need the pawns at some point, because I don't think I'm going to win these guys. You know, notice how that backward pawn actually really didn't become a target until much later in the game. And I don't think I ever purely won that pawn anyway. So this can happen with the backward pawn situations, though. I established a piece in front of it. They had to constantly think about the reach of that piece on other squares, and in some cases taking the bishop and winning the pawn. But it helped me grow my space advantage and mostly increase my control of the position overall. So bishop e4. Yeah, I guess bishop c8, probably the most tenacious, but I don't know. Yeah, e4 or f3 and e4, probably something along these lines would occur at some point. So easy to blunder a fork or something. This is the move I felt like was winning for me. It's not the only move, apparently, but I get to trade a pair of rooks here. If they avoid a rook trade, they actually get mated. So take here. Knight back to c5. Hit the bishop. Bishop f5. Oh, king e5. That would have been a nice little king walk in here. Yeah, that would have been kind of a textbook thing to do. I didn't think about that, though. Brave. But this is what can happen when you have that much control. You know, I control the e6 square. King b6, I can always meet with b4. Defend these. So this is not totally out of the question. Probably at some point a pawn's going to fall. King e5, that would have been nice. But okay, I played rook a4. This looked like a pretty good idea too. I think Black's last chance coming up was to try to bring the bishop back to c8. Like, let's say they wait with f6, rook b4. Yeah, bishop here. Cover the b7 square. I wasn't worried about a5 because of b4 using the pin, although there is king b6. But knight b3. Nail in the coffin in terms of winning this pawn. Attack 3 times. Yeah, so they played bishop c2, and I think after rook b4, we can definitively say that this is losing. And it definitely felt that way in the game, because now there's no bishop c8. If they play rook b8, even a rook trade probably is going to lose for them, but knight a6 is trivial here, winning the rook. So, yeah, and rook b7 just gets to the belly of the position towards this pawn, creates mating nets. You could imagine if Black tries to save the f-pawn but comes here, that's a nice checkmate. Supported by the king, guarding e5 and the knight. Yeah, so bishop f5, check. Thought about trying to organize a mating net here, but realistically, I think I need my pawn up on e5. Maybe I could do that. If I had a little more time, I might think about that. But you don't want to complicate it in time pressure. So rook takes f7. And yeah, this might not be the best move, rook b7, but it felt like the most professional and appropriate one under the circumstances. I don't want rook b4, rook takes b2, any of these moves to spoil the position. So happy to trade rooks here. Bring this out. And now I'm up a pawn. I still have all the positional trumps that I've had with the king on d4, knight on c5. Just further improvements. No rush. Played e4. Break up the position. Yeah, and now I want to get my king to c5 ultimately. And I did accomplish that. I wonder if king b6 would have been a little more tenacious, trying to sneak up this way. But yeah, I guess I can go here. Do we have to worry about bishop c2? Probably not. Yeah, even something like this, creeping forward. Just kind of feels eventually there's going to be a zugzwang or the knight's going to come. You know, let's just say some position like this where Black's running out of ways to try to defend. Their king is running out of squares, and something's got to give again. You can play around with this ending further if you like. But again, with Black having no counterplay whatsoever, we can take our time. See, I got the knight to a Medusa square again, where Black can't hold everything. And then get them in a situation where their king has no scope. Took my time, brought the king over. Many ways to win this. But I think doing what I did in the game is a pretty straightforward one. And Black shouldn't have taken the knight, but it will lose. So I could go after this pawn if I wanted, or start moving the f-pawn, get my king out of the way. Just making sure not to drop anything. Okay, so you can tell I'm excited about this game. Again, I told you I was in a good mood to start this video, but this is the type of chess I think I'm especially good at, is accumulating these small advantages. I really love grinding people down strategically. I love playing endgames. And this is climbing the rating ladder, so I'm trying to say stuff that's applicable to all rating levels, like the backwards pawn and the square right in front of it. If you have a bad pawn structure, you usually don't want to trade too much. But truthfully, I got to play pretty high up to my capabilities with my better openings, angling for positions I know I'm good at to take down players at this rating level, because you can see they don't make too many tactical mistakes. So interesting one. I hope you guys picked up some stuff from this video. I really enjoyed this. And let me know what you think. Let me know if you play this opening too. The Neo-Grünfeld Defense Classical Original Ultra Delayed Exchange Variation. All right. Thanks again for watching, guys. And I'll be back again soon with a new video.